Today we're talking about our new and improved Screamer turbos for the Duramax lineup. Why do you want to change from your stock unit? Do you love making horsepower? Do you love impressing your friends? Is your old turbo a little bit worn and you want something just a little bit better? Do you want your dad to come home, your truck to fix itself? We got the solution. New Screamer turbo, Duramax 04.5 to 16. Yeah, so this bolts right into your truck. It's based on the OEM housing. So it's an easy install. Instead of going from 60 some odd pounds a minute of air, you get 80 or 85 depending on what generation turbo you have. We got two new turbos. We got the lineup for the LY, LBZ, LMM, so the 04.5 to 10, and we also have one for the LML. It's great, 11 to 16. A lot of people just sell you turbo with a compressor wheel change. We change both the compressor wheel and the turbine wheel. I'm going to tell you why. On a compressor wheel, it pulls in air, it flings it around, and it accelerates it. The same as if you took a bunch of tennis balls and threw it at the wall. If you threw enough tennis balls, it would actually move that wall. And so that's how we go from air molecules at a high velocity and using that momentum to then build pressure or boost. And I love boost. I love burnouts and everything boost does for me. That's where the fun bit begins. The nozzle assembly in the turbine housing itself wasn't altered, and I'm going to explain why we didn't change that. You got your exhaust into these two ports on the Duramax, and it actually comes in through the housing around here and then comes into the vanes. If I grab the stock wheel here, you can see when that sits in, then this velocity flowing through there hits these vanes, and that pushes on that vane to spin the turbine wheel. That turbine wheel then spins the compressor wheel, and that's the short and skinny of how exhaust flow happens. You may have heard in some of the other videos we talk about pulse flow, and a lot of the newer vehicles are trying to harness this pulse flow. Pulse flow happens is when that valve lifts and you get that high energy pulse, you get a high energy wave. So let me try and explain what I mean by that. So within the turbine housing, we kind of have two different things happening. We have the constant flow of exhaust, but when that exhaust spout opens, you get that wave and it comes in through the volutes and you get a momentary spike in pressure or energy. The total energy being the pressure, temperature, and velocity of the exhaust, and that's what we're trying to harness. If you take all those together, we're going to call that our spouting velocity. And so coming into the turbine, you have your housing, and then your next restriction is going to be that turbine wheel, and that's what's really harnessing that energy. So how do we better harness the energy coming through that turbine housing? Because when you can harness it better, you can open these vanes up and you can lower your drive pressure and still make the same boost. At the same EGTs, lower drive pressure, same boost. In front of me are two different turbine wheels. They're different blades and different sizes, but let's focus on the geometry of them themselves. The traditional turbine wheel, and still used in a lot of turbos to this day, are a radial turbine wheel. And so the easiest way to tell is you can tell it's flat across the top there, and the velocity entering it is at a direct radial vector. So that's a traditional wheel. The reason it's called a mixed flow turbine wheel, we talked about radial flow, and you know, we all have a radiator fan in front of our motor. That's axial flow. Mixed flow is the combination of two. So we have those exhaust gases coming in from the vanes. Instead of in a straight radial direction, they actually start curving before they hit the turbine wheel. Because you have already transitioned into that axial component, it actually flows a little bit more. There's something called the blade speed ratio. And what that is the ratio of the tip of the turbine wheel divided by the spouting velocity of the exhaust gas hitting that turbine wheel. And so that spouting velocity is that total energy summarized into a theoretical velocity. When you have that high speed pulse, that high velocity pulse flow, everything great about getting that harness and giving you some boost. So how does this fantastic, wonderful mixed flow turbine wheel do that? So we live on Earth.
Damn, that is a sweet Earth, you might say.
Wrong.
And on Earth, we're governed by the physical laws. We're talking about centripetal forces. That's right, the forces holding the wheels together. And in a traditional wheel, actually, both of them still follow the laws of physics. Centripetal forces, we have to keep the tip of this turbine wheel in a radial direction because we're pulling it in. This material is stretching at a high velocity, and really it's very difficult to hold something straight outwards and then have something you spinning around and not end up holding it straight. Same with if you tie a rock to a rope, spin it around, that string is going to be straight. Why does this vary then on a mixed flow? On a mixed flow, you can kind of see here, because of this angle, we can actually change where that radius or that straight arm is. And with that, we actually almost get a back cupping. And what that does is we get a different incidence angle or angle of attack on that turbine wheel. So the backward cupping allows us to send exhaust gas at a higher velocity and still harness that energy. On those laws of physics, that's why we went with the mixed flow turbine wheel on the new Duramax Screamers. We use the new style GT37 turbo. They've been upgraded over the years. If you look at some of the old 6-liter GT37s, you can notice a couple of different changes and a couple different machining things to prevent those vanes from sticking. The GT37 turbos, you can see here are oil actuators. So this is an oil solenoid, 2 wires in, control the oil in and out. And so what that does is it fills a chamber in this unit here, and it actually rotates this guy. What happens when that rotates? It actually pushes on this guy here, and it actually opens and closes the vanes. And so what happens if something soots is if your solenoid no longer works and everything sits and doesn't move for a while, it'll soot itself in place. Or let's say you drove the truck, parked it, and everything kind of corroded into place. That's when you have an issue. But the new style GT37s are much better than previous generations. The other thing we did, obviously, we want to flow more. We just upsized that exterior a little bit more. Gives us a little better efficiency in the big end when you're really trying to put the power down. It's doing the things you love, I love. We can all love together. Now that we've talked about the turbine wheel, we did something a little bit different on the two different turbos. So on the early style 04.5 to 10, we actually have a 65 mil compressor wheel. We did this because we like making power. We usually want to go with we want to give you as much flow as possible without compromising spoolability. So on that early style, torque converter doesn't lock up to the high RPM. We gave you that 65 mil compressor wheel. It flows more, it spools the exact same as an LBZ. You drop that in on the LBZ, it spools the same. You're making boost, everything's great. Why go smaller? We've got the new updated turbine wheel, capitalize on it. On the late model LML, we actually have a slightly smaller inducer, and that's this side here. This is the inducer, and that's the measurement we're talking about. We have a slightly smaller inducer on that compressor wheel. Why is this? The LMLs like to lug a little bit more, and we want to make sure the drivability is there. You know what, Ryan, you're talking a lot. I didn't quite get what you're saying. I just skipped to the end of the video, hoping you do recap. Boom. So, recap. Mixed flow turbine wheel. Gives us more flow. Harnesses those high velocity pulses from the pulse flow coming out of that engine. That allows us to improve the efficiency, open up those vanes, drop the drive pressure, build the boost we need. We've got a bigger compressor wheel to flow more, and then drop those EGTs and impress all your friends towing that huge trailer, passing that, half ton. Now that you know everything, you can go impress your friends or read more on our product page, bddiesel.com. Watch out for the BD Screamer coming to you.